Abigail's voice could hush a storm. She didn't sing to impress, she sang like a prayer-made sound. On Sunday mornings at City of Zion Assembly in Lekki, when she lifted the microphone, some people wept, others raised trembling hands. Somewhere near the second row, a man listened with a different kind of hunger. Mr. Michael, wearing a sharp suit and a wristwatch that caught the light. A smile that melted suspicion. In church circles they called him blessed. Real estate in Lekki, Phase 1. He had cars that whispered money, and a face that made mothers nudge their daughters. If rumors trailed him, they were soft ones. His relationships just don't last, easily drowned by the choir's closing chord. When Abigail ended with a lingering amen, Michael's gaze stayed on her. Not the altar. He saw a crown he wanted to wear. He approached her after service with the gentleness of velvet. "You ministered heaven down," he said with a warm voice, cologne expansive. He asked to take her out the next Saturday. She heard the hush of aunties nearby and felt heat rise to her cheeks. Saying no to Michael felt like stepping in front of a moving convoy. She said yes. On Saturday, he took her to a luxury restaurant glittered with glass and gold, and they placed an order, but was delivered wrongly. When the waitress returned with the tray, a harmless wrong side dish snapped something in him. "Can't you read?" Michael barked, his voice cutting across the room. The waitress stammered apologies. He stood, eyes burning, and before anyone could blink, he tipped the plate. Hot sauce splashing down her sleeve. Conversations died. Abigail reached for his arm, whispering, "Please," but his jaw was set like concrete. He stormed out. She paid the bill with shaking hands, cheeks flaming. In the car home, she tried to speak. He clicked off conversation. "I'm not in the mood," he said, depositing her at her gate like a parcel. The night smelled of pepper and shame. He called the next day with a bouquet. "I was tired." "The service was subpar," he said, voice softened by performance. "I lost my temper and I'm sorry. It won't happen again." The words were polished, the tone contrite. He spoke about pressure, deals closing, and investors' betrayal. He painted himself not as a man who spilled food, but as a man to whom life had been unkind that week. Abigail heard her mother's voice in her head, "Forgive quickly. Keep no record of wrongs," and felt the tug of her own tenderness. "We all make mistakes," she said, though the image of the waitress's wide eyes wouldn't leave. Her friends raised eyebrows when she mentioned it. "You sure?" Amika asked. Anger is a slippery road. Abigail prayed on it. She sang on Wednesday night, felt God close as breath, and chose to believe people were capable of change. When Michael texted, "Dinner Friday?" "My treat." "We'll redo that night properly," she typed. "Okay." 3 months later, they had dinner gleamed in a private terrace with fairy lights strewn. Michael was all courtesy. The menu, the chair, the laughter timed to hers. Then came the ring. It shone like a small moon in a velvet box. "Marry me," he said with a low voice and bright eyes. The restaurant collapsed. Abigail's heart sprinted. The memory of what he did to the waitress tried to rise, but was quickly drowned by sisters squealing in her WhatsApp group. Her pastor's delighted congratulations, and Michael's arm firm around her waist. She said yes, and the word echoed like brass. The engagement photos scattered light across Instagram. In comments, people wrote, "God did it, and you deserve this, sis." Abigail pressed her cheek to Michael's shoulder and told herself that storms had passed. They married beneath chandeliers and prophecy. The vows were lush, the choir full-throated. Abigail radiant in satin that shimmered like dawn. Michael's mother cried delicate tears. His business associates shook his hand with respect. People from church whispered, "What a perfect match." In photos, Michael cupped Abigail's face with reverence. The gold band a clean circle of promise. At the reception, he leaned to whisper, "After today, it's you and me. No more late-night rehearsals." "I don't like the way some of those tenors look at you." Abigail laughed, thinking it was a joke. In the bridal suite that evening, he was attentive, generous, and the romance tender enough to steal her breath. She drifted to sleep, believing she had stepped into answered prayer. Morning would make different promises. She woke early, humming, and made pancakes because Joy wanted to be butter and syrup. When he descended in a crisp shirt, she set the plate down like an offering. He stared. What is this? The room cooled. Why didn't you ask if I ate pancakes? I don't like 'em. Never serve me this. Again. She blinked, smiling, faltering. I thought he waved her away. She brewed tea quickly, hands trembling. When she brought it, he stood, chair scraping. I'm not eating. You will, and don't waste anything in this house. That's your punishment. The word hit like a slap. After he left, she chewed the cold pancakes until her stomach turned. She washed the plate twice, as if the sponge could scour off the humiliation. That evening, she made vegetable soup and pounded yam the way her mother taught her. Palms stinging from the mortar. He came home, walked past the food, showered, and turned off his side lamp. Michael? She tried. Silence was a door closed from the inside. She lay beside him, counting heartbeats until sleep found her through a fog of unshed tears. Saturday came, and Abigail dressed for rehearsal, the modest dress. Scarf, no perfume. Where are you going? Michael asked, remote in hand. Church, she said gently. He didn't look up. You won't be singing anymore. Monogol, I don't like it. You're my wife now. Abigail laughed softly, then stopped when she saw he wasn't smiling. But the choir, it's ministry. He turned the volume up. I've spoken. She texted her choir lead. Please, I'm not feeling well. I'll miss today's rehearsal. The lie burned. On Sunday, Michael had sugared kindness arm around her, fingers lacing hers, and offering envelope fat with cash. People admired the picture they made, but at home, he picked quarrels like thorns, about a dish not properly dried, a towel hung slant. When she tried to explain, he accused her of arguing. The first slap came like thunder from a clear sky, stunning and hot. Don't raise your voice at me, he warned her, though hers had barely risen above a prayer. She stared at the floor tiles until they steadied. Later, she dabbed concealer over a swelling welt and told herself stress had knotted him. Love made room. She thought love could learn to breathe in a smaller space. The next Sunday, she covered her face with her scarf and wore a thicker makeup. What happened? Sister Doob asked in the lobby, eyes searching. I slipped, Abigail answered, body remembering the shove. Pastor Tun noticed too. My daughter, are you okay? She smiled a yes sir that betrayed her. He prayed for her in his office, hand light on her shoulder, eyes complicated. Later, Amaka cornered her near the car park. Abby, your light is dimming. Talk to me. Abigail shook her head and swallowed her fear. Marriage is tough at first. We're learning each other. At home, Michael was all flowers and a new bag. I shouldn't have raised my voice, he said. Skillful at repentance, that didn't cost him. You know I love you. He stroked her cheek precisely where it hadn't hurt. Abigail's chest ached with wanting to believe him. That night she dreamed of singing and woke to silence. A silence he curated, filled with his preferences and rules. She began to speak less. She learned the routes his anger took and rearranged furniture inside herself to accommodate it. Every day she set another plate on that long table of compromises, hoping one would be the last. The choir's anniversary arrived, and Abigail insisted on attending as a congregant. Just to support them, she murmured. Michael watched her dress with an appraiser's eye. At church, a visiting minister called her out kindly. Sister Abigail, minister one song, he pleaded, remembering her voice. The room begged. Michael's jaw flexed. She looked at him. He gave a tight nod that wasn't permission so much as a dare. When she sang, pain loosened its grip. The room rose, hands open like empty bowls. Michael clapped absently, smiling thin. In the car he was silent. Silence that crackled. At home, the storm landed. You embarrassed me, he hissed. Don't ever disobey me in public. She tried to explain the pressure, the invitation, but he didn't want to speak. He wanted to surrender. The beating was deliberate, not enough to break bones, enough to break certainty. She slept on the bathroom mat, tasting iron, a towel pressed to her lip. In the mirror the next morning, she practiced the story she would tell. I was clumsy. Lies began to sound like lullabies she hummed to survive. A month later, 2 lines on a test strip glowed pale and impossible. Abigail touched her belly with wonder. Michael's face softened when she told him. He lifted her, laughing a laugh she hadn't heard in months. For a few weeks, he was gentle. He brought fruits, scheduled prenatal visits, and installed a swing in a room he called the nursery. Abigail exhaled. Perhaps the child would be a bridge. Then one evening he came home scowling, a contract gone sour. He demanded dinner, though she'd been nauseous all day. The stew was slightly too salty, and rage returned. A beast that remembered the house. "You don't listen," he snapped, shoving the plate. She flinched, backing toward the stairs. He grabbed her wrist, yanking hard. Her foot was missed. She tumbled a sick, slow physics. Pain burst like fireworks. At the hospital, the doctor's eyes were wet when he said, "I'm sorry." Michael squeezed her shoulder and repeated a new lie. She slipped. Abigail signed a form with hands that would not stop trembling. In her chest, a song died. After the miscarriage, her world narrowed to the space between breath. Michael was kind for 3 days. Then angry, she grieved too long. "We'll try again," he said, as if babies were appointments. He tightened, control passwords changed, driver monitored, a camera installed for safety. He asked her to step down from all church duties. "Focus on home," he said, and home felt like a locked drawer. Abigail hid her phone in a loaf of gel fabric and downloaded a recording app. She began to document the tone, the threats, the slaps that arrived like punctuation. She visited a counselor in TBS. During choir practice hours, she pretended to still keep. The counselor spoke words like stepping stones, safety plan, emergency bag, friend who knows. Code word. Abigail told Amaka everything and hid a small backpack under the trunk liner. She practiced leaving in her mind at night, wait for his meeting, call a cab to a friend's, go to a cousin's in Surleer, change numbers. Then Sunday came and Pastor Toon's sermon wandered into her scar. "Love rejoices in truth," he said, eyes sweeping the room. She tried to stand at the altar when he called for the hurting, but Michael's fingers tightened around hers. The last storm gathered without warning. Rain battered the windows, the estate road turning to a mirror. Michael returned early, face gray with fury. "You've been talking to people," he accused. Holding her phone, the hidden recording app, open, a message unsent. "Who have you told?" He advanced as she backed into the dining table. "Michael, please," she whispered. He struck the vase. It shattered like a gunshot. She ran for the bedroom, slammed the door, pushed a chair against it. He shouldered through, stronger, angrier. She reached for the window latch, mad with escape. He grabbed her arm and shook until the room blurred. The first blow sent light from her eyes. The second dimmed the world. The third made it far away. A neighbor, alarmed by the crash and the crying, pounded the door. "Sir, are you okay?" Silence swallowed answer. When the pounding didn't stop, Michael cursed, dragged Abigail into the car, blood on his cuff. Rain frothed on the bonnet as he sped toward the hospital, tires hissing. At a roundabout, the brake lights of Lagos rose and fell like angry fireflies. He beat the horn, shouting at nobody, shouting at himself. By the time they reached the emergency bay, the night had settled into something that would not be dislodged. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and grief. Nurses moved with practiced speed. A doctor called for O negative. Michael paced, then sat, then stood, then arranged his face for concern. The police arrived at the behest of the neighbor, who had called half the estate security. "What happened?" an officer asked, pen poised. "She fell," Michael repeated, the lie polished, rehearsed. The officer's brows met. "In the rain? Inside your house?" Michael's jaw clenched. Money has a sound when it enters a room, but it couldn't drown suspicion. Pastor Tundi came, Bible closed for once. He prayed in a corner, words tripping over his tears. The choir gathered in small clusters, hands linked, singing under their breath. Amaka shook, rage and fear braided tight. A nurse asked for the next of kin's consent. Pastor Tund signed as a spiritual guardian when Michael hesitated. Dawn rolled in gray and tired. In the ICU, machines did the work of steadiness. Abigail's face was pale, swollen at the temple. A tiny bruise on her lip like a secret. Somewhere inside her, the part that sang was very far away. Listening for a voice to answer? It was evening when the doctor called them into a small, merciless room. "We did everything," he said, palms open. Words like swelling, trauma, and didn't respond floated and fell. The world tilted. Amika let out a sound the hospital had heard before too. Human to be anything but grief. Pastor Tun's shoulders collapsed inward. The choir's humming died in the air. On the ward, the machines went still. A nurse switched off a monitor with infinite gentleness. Somewhere, far away, a thunderstorm ended without apology. Police placed Michael in handcuffs outside under a pewter sky. Cameras from curious phones lifted. A security guard turned away to wipe his eyes. "Sir, you are under arrest for suspicion of domestic violence resulting in death," the officer said, voice flat with duty. Michael stared ahead, his face a portrait cracking. The estate gates that had known his convoys now watched a different procession. Gossip who once praised his suits now carried a new story. One with weight enough to bend spines. In the choir loft at City of Zion, a microphone stood alone. Its cord curled like a question that would never be answered. They buried Abigail with songs she had once carried to others. The church overflowed, vendors paused under umbrellas. Boys in uniform stood on the curb. Aunties wept into handkerchiefs. And men stared at their shoes. Pastor Tund spoke without Polish. "We failed her," he said, voice hoarse. "We believed the image over truth, public kindness over private safety. We told her to endure what should never be endured." Never again. The congregation stirred. Some in agreement, some in discomfort. All unable to look away from the casket draped in white lilies. In the weeks that followed, the church made a vow with teeth. A support team formed, numbers of counselors posted on every bulletin, ushers trained to see beyond scarves and powder. A quiet fund grew for women and men who needed to leave without notice. The choir left an empty microphone at the front of the stage for a month. A reminder and a promise. Amika started a foundation in Abigail's name. And the first seminar was blunt. Not every man in church is a Speck. A neighbor, the one who knocked until his knuckles bled, gave testimony. If you hear something, don't mind your business. Michael's trial began with documents Abigail had recorded. Courage hidden in bites. The waitress from months ago testified. Tears in her throat. Past girlfriends stepped out of shadows, voices trembling but sure. Justice does not resurrect, but it can name things. In naming, it can begin to heal. And in the back of the church on certain Sundays, when the choir swells, some swear they hear a familiar harmony. Feather the air for a second, a grace note. Riding the ceiling before it is gone, like a benediction for survivors who will now be believed. Dear viewers, if you found this story powerful, moving or thought-provoking, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story like this. Your support helps us share more stories that touch lives and open eyes. Thank you.